Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pipe Report. So I have an interesting article to go over, and kind of a funny article. Now, regardless of what you think on DACA, whether you are for it or against it, the issue isn't DACA itself, but it is activist judges who decide what is what. And once more, we see a judge who goes beyond the scope of his authority to try to deliver a ruling based on Trump's past rhetoric. Again, you can talk to any lawyer. Hell, you could even talk to any judge if you know them. What someone says, especially if they said it a year ago, is irrelevant to the matter of law. They tried doing the same thing with the travel ban, that Trump's past statements during the campaign, and not only Trump, but Rudy Giuliani, indicates that the Trump travel ban is actually directed at the Muslim faith. And they're using these comments and these slogans and these past remarks, and they're saying that that institutes motive. It has nothing to do with that. A judge is supposed to decide what is and what is not constitutionally acceptable by basing their rulings on precedent. They didn't do this in this case. Yet another federal judge has ruled that Trump showed clear-cut indications of racial prejudice against Mexicans during the campaign, and he used that in a new decision Friday to further dent the administration's efforts to end the Obama-era DACA deportation amnesty. Judge William Alsup, who earlier in the week had blocked the DACA phase-out and ordered the government to start accepting amnesty renewals again, issued a second order adding more reasons to his decision. He said that the immigrant rights advocates had proved Mr. Trump's actions were unconstitutional because they targeted Mexicans, after the president during the campaign complained about the types of people coming into the U.S. from its southern border. Okay, read that sentence. Read that last sentence again. Who do you expect is going to come to the U.S. on the southern border? It's probably going to be, more than likely, at least in the majority, people from Mexico. Likewise, people that come from the northern border, I am going to rightly presume that they are mostly Canadian. So Trump in the campaign saying he wants to build a wall on the southern border because there is a massive influx of illegal immigration, which does come from countries like Mexico, isn't racist. It isn't directed at Mexicans. It is the most logical conclusion based on location, based on geography. If he's going to put a wall on the northern border, he would be referring to Canadians. This judge is trying to twist things in his favor so he can be an activist judge like other judges in the Ninth Circuit Court and try to govern from the bench, try to usurp the executive authority that is given to the president. While acknowledging a gap of 2 years between some of the comments and the president's actions, Judge Alsup said he was still able to draw a direct line between Mr. Trump's complaint in June 2015 that Mexico sends rapists and criminals to the U.S. and September 2017 decision to phase out DACA. Okay, that's interesting here, because the only way the judge could reasonably do this is that it is proven that Mexico is not actually sending rapists and murderers and criminals, or rapists and criminals, over to the U.S. If they are indeed sending people convicted of rape or people convicted of a crime who spent time in jail, and if they did illegally enter the U.S., then what Trump said is true, because Trump never said all Mexicans are rapists. He never said that. So unless the judge can create an actual inference that guarantees Mexico does not send over anyone that's a criminal or has been convicted of rape, his whole argument here falls apart. But yet, for him it doesn't, because he wants to rule from the bench. Here's what he said. Are clear-cut indications of racial prejudice on the campaign trail to be forgotten altogether? Judge Alsup, a Clinton appointee on the bench, said in his latest ruling. He said the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals had itself used Mr. Trump's campaign comments to rule his travel ban policies illegal, and while the Supreme Court has several times delivered spankings to the lower courts for their attempts to block the travel ban, Judge Alsup said he felt justified in using the campaign comments against Mr. Trump, at least for now. It should be noted that 8 out of the 10 decisions that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals says is overturned by the Supreme Court. 8 out of 10. That means 80% of the Ninth Circuit Court's rulings are overturned by the Supreme Court. I think that indicates a clear political bias. I think it indicates clear evidence that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, they have a political motive, and they should be broken up. The whole point of the government, the whole point of the Constitution as it was adapted, was to have 3 separate branches of government, 3 separate areas of authority: the executive branch, the courts, and Congress. And what's happening right now is that these activist judges are trying to usurp the executive branch and instead try to create their own authority and their own United States that's based on 2 different power structures: Congress and the court system. This is against everything that the Constitution dictates. This is against everything that we know about the United States. Congress needs to break up the Ninth Circuit Court. They do. Again, whether you agree or disagree with DACA, you should at least stand up for the rule of law. You should stand up for the Constitution, because the Constitution is sanctimonious to all us all. It should be. The Constitution is the greatest document ever written, that with the Declaration of Independence. It provides us a clear-cut path on what this country should do, on how this country should act in terms of politics, in terms of philosophy, in terms of court systems. I shouldn't say philosophy, because the First Amendment grants you the ability to perceive what you want and believe what you want. But in terms of law and Constitution, the document is pretty much there. I mean, anyone can read it and understand it. But more and more now, we see these activist judges who hate Trump, who despise Trump, decide that they're going to usurp the executive branch strictly because it's Trump. But Obama, he can do, unconstitutional things all he wants and get away with it. He can say he doesn't need Congress, he has a phone and a pen. He can usurp Congress and do his own executive orders, like he did with Obamacare, like he did with the Clean Power Air Act. I mean, there's an article on a National Review that said 10 times Obama violated the Constitution. It's pretty interesting. But no, nothing happens to them. It should be noted that the Ninth Circuit and other federal appeals court are stacked with progressive judges or hardcore left judges. And the reason they are stacked that way is because Obama and Harry Reid decided to employ the nuclear option in Congress, meaning that the filibuster was removed. So instead of the Senate needing 60 votes to bypass the filibuster, they could do with a simple majority. And then, when Mitch McConnell and Trump did that for the Supreme Court, everyone lost their minds. This is so wrong. He's violating the Constitution. Well, Harry Reid and Obama did that. They did it for all the courts under the Supreme Court. There's a lot more courts under the Supreme Court than there is in the Supreme Court. There's only one Supreme Court. There are dozens and dozens of appeals courts. So this notion that what Trump and McConnell did was just wrong and violate the Constitution, yet at the same time allowing Harry Reid and Obama to do exactly the same thing, but worse, because for the most part, cases are heard on lower courts. Not many cases actually make it to the Supreme Court. It's just contradictory. In fact, it just contradicts its own basis. Anyways, I lost where I'm at now. Judge Alsup said Mr. Trump also dented his own decision by repeatedly saying during the early part of his presidency that he supported DACA recipients, then turned around and announced his phase-out of the program. So wait, the judge gets to also now decide what Trump thinks? The judge gets to decide what Trump believes in? Trump is not allowed to change his mind about something. If he does, then that gives credence to the notion that Trump is racist, or I'm not sure where he's going with this, where this judge is going with this. And I do like how the whole point of this article here is that the judge, he released more information on why he made the decision. What that tells me is that he knew it would be scrutinized heavily, because what he did made absolutely no sense. He knew that he was being an activist judge, and now he had to try to reinforce his argument by just making these crazy platitudes that have really no basis in fact or have any kind of support structure. It was strange finding for the judge, who just days earlier had ruled the DACA program itself legal, but did not look at the multiple times then President Obama had said it was illegal before he reversed it himself. That's kind of interesting here. So it's okay for Obama to change his mind. But if Trump does it, it's illegal. Trump's... The judge also did not seem to take note of the repeated times during the campaign that Mr. Trump called DACA illegal as a policy and said he would revoke it, even as he said he wanted to find a solution for dreamers who benefit from it. Homeland Security is trying to figure out how to comply with Judge Alsop's original order requiring the government to restart DACA renewals. Again, this will be overturned by a higher court. This is guaranteed to be overturned by a higher court. This Judge Alsop is just another activist judge that we see, and there are so many of them now. There are so many of them, and they have to be disbanded. We have to break up the court. Congress can, but Congress is reticent to do it so. They are afraid of the blowback of what would happen to them. People think they're trying to turn into a governmental oligarchy. That's what they think is going to happen. It's sad. And again, like I said, it doesn't matter how you feel about DACA. What matters is the rule of law. And if you are bypassing and ignoring the rule of law because you have your own personal feelings in the matter, or your proclivities don't align with Trump or whoever is in the government at the time, that negatively reflects on you. A judge is supposed to be impartial, unbiased in his ruling, base his decisions on precedent, not how he feels. Not that he's getting a lot of heat from those who want DACA instituted. Not that all those in the Ninth Circuit hate Trump and he should join in with their decisions. He should be a judge of legal standing. He should be a judge people look to as a guidance, a figure, someone who stands for the rule of law and not his own personal predisposition. I think him coming out now with reinforcement, more evidence for his decision indicates he knew what he did was wrong. He knew he had no basis to do so. He knew it made no sense. So he had to try to reinforce his decision, and people aren't buying it. I'm sorry, Judge. People aren't buying it, and you should be ashamed for violating the rule of law. And I'm done.